Happy Sunday. I'm so sorry I'm late. I was wrapping up some interviews with the podcast, which ran late, and so I'm showing up late. I'm so sorry. And I even scheduled this an hour later than it was supposed to end to give me a buffer, but um, it didn't work out that way. But thank you so much for your patience. If you're here, let me know in the comments. Please say hello. Today we're going to continue our conversation about how to get your first job in dermatology. We'll do what we do every week when I go live on Sundays, is we'll talk about health and wellness, spirituality, and we'll just continue our conversation as it relates to the D&B Dermatology and PPA group, the Mahogany Telederm Nurse Internship, and all the communities that I'm a part of, and the questions that you all bring me. So if you're new here, welcome. My name is Dr. Kimberly Madison. I'm a doctorally prepared nurse practitioner and one of your co-hosts here. Host. I just and I use this platform to share my journey as a nurse practitioner, entrepreneur who's passionate about dermatology. Like I said, I come on live every weekend for almost a year now. In December, it'll be 1 year. I started in December during Vlogmas. I won't be doing Vlogmas this year, but it was a great jumpstart to getting a routine. And over the course of time, we picked Sunday as the day. I just moved to Houston a month ago, and so we're still trying to pick out a good time. But this is the second week in a row that I've at least posted a live thumbnail to let you know that I'm coming on, and hopefully in the next month or so, I'll be able to nail down a time that really works for me. It'll probably be more like a window. So if that works for you, I hope so. I hope it does. You can certainly hit the notification bell, subscribe, and this way when I do go live, you should be notified of that promptly. So like I said, we always start with health and wellness, because it's my belief that if you take care of other people, you have to take care of yourself. And so we'll talk about that. Do you like my little setup? It's not an official setup, although it might be. Ebony Eyes, hi. So this is what we have for right now. I still have a lot of decorating to do, but I'm pretty slow when it comes to that because my attention is on other things. So I'm just going to pull up our devotional for the week. But in the meantime, I can tell you that I have so many updates for you from what I was talking about last week, all the things I needed to do. This platform has been great for accountability. You don't have to be on social media to be held accountable, but it helps me a lot. You can have someone in your corner. You can just write things down. You can make videos and never share them. But certainly having something that keeps you on point can be helpful if you need that kind of encouragement. And so I scheduled my mammogram. It's going to be on Tuesday. And actually, it was kind of a hard appointment to get. There was like 4 weeks out without an appointment. But I grabbed like the last one. And then I ordered my compound prescriptions. I told you last week that Leah wanted me. Leah Waller is my PA, my dermatology PA in Western Virginia. She helps treat my atopic dermatitis, and then from that, I developed post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. And so the atopic derm is well controlled, thank God. Haven't had any flares for a long time. But one thing I learned from my last trip is that to always travel with my products, so that if I get a flare, I can treat it. Because as soon as you feel redness or see redness or itching or irritation, you want to get it quickly so that it doesn't turn into hyperpigmentation. And now that I'm here in Houston and it's humid, that's always been a great benefit for dry skin. And I just stay on top of my moisturizer, and I've been really hydrated. So I haven't had any problems so far. Well, actually on my face, I have had some atopic derm lower, but I've been managing that with ointment, CeraVe's healing ointment to be exact, just because they gave me a free container. And then I use a compound to treat the melasma and then the hyperpigmentation on my neck. I need to take some new pictures. I haven't done that in a while. But that's what she helps me with. And last week I told you that when I moved here, she wanted me to switch pharmacies so that they could deliver it temperature controlled. Well, it turns out the pharmacy in Northern Virginia can actually do that too. So I just ordered it through them, and it should be here this week. I told you I needed to order glasses. So I did order the glasses. I didn't have time to post pictures on the internet. And it'll take about 4 to 8 weeks for them to come. But when that comes, I'll bring them on. And so the walking pad arrived. I used it yesterday for the first time. And then I ordered the standing desk. That will be here later in the week. And so, yeah, I'm excited. The main thing, I just have to figure out where it's going to go so it looks aesthetically pleasing. So, yeah, happy to report that. So let's read our devotional. This is the Holy Bible app. On there, they have devotional. There's an icon at the bottom that says plans. You can pick in put in any keyword that you want and it will come up. This one is focused on anxiety because I've shared my own anxiety over the course of the last year. And the more I talk to my colleagues in healthcare, I realize I think we all live with a little bit of that. And so when I saw this, I thought it was perfect. And as we're talking, it's November and we're entering seasonal affective disorder period, which for them, and generally speaking, it's where the change of the seasons, the exposure to the light, can have an impact on people's mood, making them feel down, depressed, sometimes hopeless. And so I recognized last year that I had been going through that every year. And so this year, I'm eager to see how the weather and the climate impacts me. But also on my list of things to still do is get a women's health provider, a therapist. Leah wants me to see an allergist. So I still have those things that I need to do. So let's get into our devotional and then we can start talking about, we'll continue our conversation about how to get your first job in dermatology. So this is called Stepping into Freedom. Some of us have been struggling with anxiety for so long that we no longer feel the need to overcome it. It simply becomes a part of our lives, a menace which, although bothersome, we have somehow grown comfortable with. Maybe you've stopped believing that you can be used by God, but in that moment of sheer despair, will you allow yourself to be freed? Will you take that step of faith towards God and be open to his work in your life? Most people don't realize that while continuing to live in this bondage, they are compromising on a life of fullness and freedom that God intended for them to enjoy. Maybe the breakthrough at the end of the tunnel is not just for you, but for those around you. The more you dwell on your fears, the more you are enslaved by them. But when you use prayer and worship as your weapons, the spiritual strongholds that have held you captive are pulled down. You may not feel anything change physically or instantly, but as you begin to pray and worship and just delve into the presence of God, you come to the end of yourself. In that place of brokenness and surrender, God takes charge of your life. Both worship and prayer come from a place of submission and declaration that God is bigger and greater than anything else in your life. While Paul and Silas could have chosen to resent God and be bitter in the face of their predicament, they chose to worship God through pain, persecution, and uncertainty. Their worship came from a place of joy and gratitude, a joy that can only be birthed in your heart by a revelation of who God is. That's what helped these men brave every storm that came their way. That's what helped them look past their pain and hurt and just burst out in exuberant and powerful worship. The joy of the Lord is our strength. Oftentimes, our first response to a stressful situation is that of fear and anxiety. That is the nature we were born with, but not the nature we were reborn with. Paul says in the book of Romans, do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. The renewal of mind is a process orchestrated by the Holy Spirit as we yield to Christ's teachings. He will empower us and help us respond with faith over fear and lead the life of victory that we are called to live. So, in a moment of reflection, ask yourself, how has Christ been renewing your mind so far when it comes to the topic of anxiety? Write down 3 truths that you've learned so far and ask the Holy Spirit to give you greater understanding of these truths. Freedom dwells within you, and his name is the Spirit of Christ. Our scripture comes from Romans 12, verse 2. And be not fashioned according to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is the good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Amen. Thank you for listening. I'm just going to pull up my notes for you. So like I said, I saw the data analytics and saw that this was one of my most watched videos. So thought I'd just come back and continue that conversation. So my first recommendation, if you're trying to get into derm, is make sure you understand what it is and all the industry itself. So if you're new to derm, more than likely your focus is on the clinician, that direct patient care. So talk about that. There's 3 areas in dermatology: medical, cosmetic, and surgical. Medical is all, and those are different appointments too, by the way. So medical, things like atopic dermatitis, eczema, psoriasis, rosacea, wounds, vitiligo, all those kind of things, skin cancer, hair loss, acne. So those are your medical diagnoses. And people who are purists in derm, I consider myself to be one because of how I was brought into derm. I think a lot of your perspective on derm is going to be how you enter. And so, because each area has so much to learn that, well, you can learn them all simultaneously. In my experience and what I hear from other people is there's usually kind of a step approach to it. But in medical derm, so yeah, the purists believe that the foundation of dermatology is medical. And even before that, you need to have a really good, solid understanding of general medicine, internal medicine, because the skin, the largest organ of the body, is a reflection of what's going on inside, but also outside, like how our body interacts with the environment. So it's good to have a good understanding of that. If you're in NP school, you might already have a book that's been recommended for you. So that's a good place to start. You can read through that. You can go to Google, look at PubMed, look up some articles. If you're in school, you can go to CINAHL and see any articles written in nursing. There is certainly organizations you can join and get access to journals, like the Dermatology Nurses Association, the first and largest organization for dedicated to nurses and nurse practitioners. So that's what makes them unique from some of the other organizations that I've talked about and that you know about, because the other organizations are really, as far as I know, focus on the provider, so the NP. And like I have shared my own story that, when I tried to get my first NP job in dermatology, it was a surprise that I didn't meet the qualifications, even though I'd been a nurse for 10 years, because they were really focused on the dermatology experience. And so from that awareness, my recommendation and realization is really, for those of us who that's a goal, we should have started in as a nurse. And so that's where I spend most of my time helping those of you who are a little bit behind me in nursing to do that. And then my colleagues who also already experienced make that transition. But if you're in nursing, it's the best time. So you want to certainly absorb as much as you can about internal medicine. Not only will that help you understand derm better, that'll just make you be able to provide more holistic care in general. So when your patient talks to you about these other things that are going on, you'll be able to have that conversation with them. So it's really important. And so like I said, I was interviewing on the Melanin Initiative with Dr. Stacy Bentel. She's the founder of Bentel Leadership Institute. And one thing she was talking about is because she started in the ICU. And so I asked her, as you probably have heard, there's an old age recommendation that nurses should start in med surg. And so she started in the ICU. And so I asked her if she thinks that is still good advice. And she does a lot of mentoring and coaching. And she says, you know, she thinks it's good to have some experience somewhere, whether it's med surg, as a CNA, as a patient care tech, whatever role, right, before the ICU. So you have some clinical background of what's going on. She's like, because just do. Now, she mentioned 6 months and then you could move on. I don't know any jobs that will allow you to stay just 6 months. But the time's going to go by really fast anyway. And she also noted, which I agree, is like, what's the rush? I know when you're in your 20s, you just feel like a sense of urgency all the time. That's going to happen until you're out of your 20s, by the way. But you need that energy, because that's a great time. A lot of people don't have families, they don't have other responsibilities. You need to take that energy and do everything: travel, discover who you are, explore relationship, make mistakes, take the time to understand those mistakes, and develop your philosophy for life. You need that energy to kind of like do a lot of building and creating a foundation, so that as you continue to move into your 30s and your 40s and your 50s, you can build on that foundation. And so just take advantage of this time in your life and do as much building as you can. And so I agree. I understand that sense. And some people do have families, they have a lot of responsibilities, a lot of people sacrifice for them. So they don't have the luxury of time like some other people might. But taking that first year and developing a good solid foundation in general medicine would be wonderful. Now, you can also be in nursing school or be in practice already, and learning as much as you can right there too. And you can do this simultaneously. But it's a lot. Nursing's a lot. Taking care of patients is a lot. And there's a lot of information to learn. So first thing is understand dermatology. Understand them. Have a good foundation in internal medicine and really understand medical. In medical, look at those articles, attend conferences. What topics are they talking about? Where are the problems at? Who are the big name companies that are creating medications? What are people saying are the main challenges in providing care, like insurance, access to care, long wait times, lack of education when it comes to skin of color, lack of diversity in clinical trials, lack of foreign languages when it comes to written material. So those are some problem areas. What's on the horizon? Things like AI, certainly more practitioners are going into entrepreneurship. What does that look like? There's more practices being bought out by larger firms. What does that look like? The people who are there, what have been the problems and the benefits of that they can identify? And then cosmetic, right? So what's the difference between providing cosmetic care in a clinic that does everything as opposed to, like, say, maybe a med spa that only does aesthetic treatments? So you want to get a good understanding of how each of those specialties work together. And a lot of people focus so much on the aesthetics or medical, and they leave out surgical. And I don't talk about it enough either. But a good friend of mine, Dr. Teresa Talons, a doctorally prepared nurse practitioner out in Virginia Beach, and she is the owner of Pulse. She provides online programs to help you with advanced suturing skills. There are some NPs like herself who primarily just do surgery. And so if wherever you are, if you're in a place where you can get a lot of practice suturing, you take some of her courses and you sell yourself on that, and maybe that looking for someone to really hone in on that. I mean, don't overlook that as a way in or another layer of skills that you can present. You can say, look, I did this comprehensive program, check. I've done this suturing program, check. Um, and so unless you're trying to get into like a med spa specifically, then they won't care if you don't have aesthetic or cosmetic treatment experience. The med spa will care. So now you have a good understanding of dermatology as a practitioner. Then you're going to advance that research into understanding the industry. Who are all the key players? I already talked about firms coming in and buying them out. And you see other people walking around, right? You have your medical science liaison. That traditionally has been a pharmacist. But we have some NPs coming in and doing that. So basically, this person spends the week doing research and learning about being abreast of the clinical trials. They come into that practitioner who's super busy so we'll hold that thought. And they do some like on the spot education because you're just so busy. You don't have time to do it yourself. So they come in and they do that. They'll sponsor dinners like we do at DMV Dermatology. And then they get assigned regions. So they are really a good liaison between all the providers in that region. So they're a good person to know. So when you go to conferences or you go to these dinners, they're a good person to make connections with. Even on LinkedIn. So medical science liaison, I've met advanced practice provider liaisons. They're there to support the APP. Again, a lot of education. And typically they work for some pharmaceutical company. And yeah, so those people are there. Of course, you have reps from the company. They'll come in. Some of them sponsor dinners. They go to the conferences. They know everyone. And so all these people, because they travel to all the different offices, they know who's hiring, who's leaving, who's good to work for, who's good to work with, things like that. So those are some good people to look at. And of course, these are other positions you can be interested in. And maybe you don't need the extensive experience that you might need as a practitioner. And maybe you get more flexibility in that lifestyle. So I know with medical science liaisons, at least for the NP and the ones I've talked to for that company in particular, just like the pharmacists, they're hired because they have a doctorate education. So there are some of those jobs do have requirements. So let's talk about the lifestyle. So you're going to hear all kind of schedules from Monday to Friday to I would say 25, 32 patients. That's a comfortable number. And some people are doing like 40 plus. And then they have help sometimes. They have help with an MA. And so that's another way to get exposure into derm. So a lot of nurses start off, maybe they do CNA or LPN, even patient care tech. So that kind of route, which typically would place you in long-term care or the hospital setting. Not a lot of derm happening there. You can start as a nurse outpatient in a derm clinic, and the requirements won't be the same as you trying to get in as a nurse practitioner. So that's why I put so much emphasis on doing this as a nurse, if you're in a position to do that. So you have your MA, and they get a lot of hands-on experience. So in our training, it's all primary care. So you're going to see those MAs doing blood work, specimen collection, vitals, a lot of admin. And so when you're comparing the two, they're not the same at all. MAs in dermatology get to do, they're doing documentation, so they're becoming familiar with the vocabulary, which is a huge thing on its own. I've heard NPs were described for like a whole year just so that they can get with the language and the medication. Because when you're scribing, you're doing everything from writing out the HPI, the presentation, seeing the prognosis and the progress of that disease. You're writing out evaluations, medications. You're getting familiar with the ICD codes and billing, preventative measures, insurance. So don't overlook scribing as an entry point. That's another great thing you could be doing if you're doing other things. Because like I said, a lot of people start CNA route. And some people start a CNA in high school. And I don't know what the minimum age is for a scribe, but I can't imagine. I mean, there might be some restrictions, but certainly 18, maybe younger, it would be worth looking into. So that's another way you could get in there. And depending on the hours and the flexibility of that, you might be able to do that while you're in school, if you work through nursing school, which I've done a whole video on working through nursing school. So yeah, you'll have your MA, and they're doing scribing, they're helping with procedures, they're presenting the patient. So very, very hands-on. And so that's when you look at job announcements for dermatology nurse practitioners, you're going to see that having MA experience is valued. You have your front desk, you have your office manager, you might have a biologics coordinator, because some of these medications require a lot of paperwork or phone calls or digging deep into the records. And as a provider, if you're one of those people seeing, even if you're just seeing the 32, but certainly if you're seeing 40 plus, you don't have time to do all those calls. And so the biologics coordinator is super helpful to the team. I know there's one lady, Janelle Bell. She's the host of that's Derm Good podcast. She came to Diversity in Dermatology this year, and she was a biologics coordinator, started her own biologics coordinator company. So I just love for you to learn about these other opportunities, not only in dermatology, but in entrepreneurship. And what a brilliant idea, right? And so there's that. Your MA, by the way, so there'll be like a set. Let's say you have the first, say, 25 patients, you have one MA. And every time you get to a new tier range, you'll get another MA, depending on where you work. I've heard everything from 2 to 3 MAs to none. And by the way, you can work in, of course, outpatient. And so many of the conversations about derm, to me, are focused on that outpatient private practice. But derm happens everywhere, in every setting. So you've got long-term care. In long-term care, you're going to see a lot of wounds, but you will see other diseases. And depending on the setting, they might have a dermatology provider that comes in and rounds, or the patients might have to get sent out. In either case, there's a gap where there's not a dermatology provider, if at all, because if they have to get sent out and there's insurance issues and transportation, because derm, unless it's a wound in that setting, is really not, it's kind of lower on the totem pole. So then if you're in that setting, as like a wound care provider, you become the derm person. And so if you're a nurse in that setting, you still can get a lot of exposure to derm in that setting. There's mobile derm. Joy, who's part of Diversity in Dermatology, is one of the members of the DMV Dermatology and PPA group. She does mobile derm. So she goes to long-term care settings also. I can't remember if she goes to homes. And then I know there are nurse practitioners who go to long-term care settings as dermatology nurse practitioners, and they are the derm provider. Derm, mobile derm. There's some telehealth, like what's that company that's really popular? You know them. Is it? It's not Muesli. Muesli is one, but that's not the one I was thinking of. And this company that I'm thinking of, they're not even all over the country, but they do great marketing. And so until I looked into their company, I thought they were everywhere. And now even saw Google has something online. So Telederm is an option. You can start your own Telederm practice. You can incorporate it into a different practice. I mean, nowadays everyone's providing Botox, like gynecologists are offering it. And then like through the Elite MP, he has his course on dermatology, and it's structured where it can help you start like a primary care derm practice or incorporate into like another practice that you already might be running. So many ways you can practice dermatology in different settings. I don't know anyone that does like home health derm specifically, but I wouldn't doubt it. And then your regions, it's going to be so different practicing in a densely populated place like Boston, DC, even Miami is its own culture, as opposed to going rural where you have transportation, broadband, all those kind of, and then of course socioeconomics, and then the kind of dermatological conditions you're going to encounter. I remember I did like a participate in a webinar for like mountain medicine. Like the sound of that just sounds so exciting. Um, and so certainly wherever you practice, it's going to be different, not necessarily skill sets, but different things you encounter, and then your level of resourcefulness will change. So those are the different areas, those are the different roles, those are different places. And then, so now you've done that. So now you want to shadow, you want to get some hands-on experience or some in-person experience so you can see if what you're hearing is true and if it's what you like. And so before you even make that contact, I want you to be prepared in case they say yes, right? So you need to have a dermatology focus. I'm going to recommend a CV. I know for most of us, we always hear resume. And in a lot of conversations, they're going to be used interchangeably. But after the amount of time I spent creating my CV after being in healthcare so long, I wish I would have started in the beginning because I could have easily have updated it as I went along my journey, and it wouldn't have been so difficult to remember all the things I did. And so I have my mentees doing that right now, having them start off doing that. And I think as nurses, it will show you your value in all the things you do. So many nurses say they don't like research, they're not creative. But if you show up for work every day, you're going to figure out something. That's creation, that's innovation. Like I said, research. Maybe you don't like data analysis, but you love solving problems, looking at what everyone else is doing and finding out something that works, seeing how well it works and repeating that, or finding an alternative and sharing what you learned. That's research. And so I think if you have a CV and you're putting out different skills, the different things you participate in, the different programs you create, the different opportunities you attend, you'll start to see your value is beyond what you do with the patient. And I think that will be that will really help in our culture and in our practice. So you're going to put your CV together. It's going to be professional. A good friend of mine, Dr. Farah Laurent, she hosts the Nursing Dose with Farah podcast. She just did a whole episode on why you're not getting that interview. Now she targets new grads trying to get in like ICU and ED, these kind of competitive specialty areas. Well, that's what dermatology nurse practitioners are trying to do. They're trying to get into a specialty area that's very competitive. So she gave a lot of great advice, including how to structure your resume, which was, well, she made some things that you could say are preferences, right? Font at 11, using Calibre or Arial, because Times New Roman, sometimes people can't read that, things like that. And then it's okay for it to be more than one page. And certainly when you get into the CV and you see people who have been in this practice for decades, especially people in academia, that list, it gets extensive. And you should always cater your CV for what you're applying for. So yes, you should have a dermatology focused CV, and then have your presence on digital. Google yourself, find out what people see. If you have a very generic name, you could get away with it. Sometimes they ask for you to share your social media so they can see what you're all about. And if you do enough digging, you can find people. But certainly you want to be on LinkedIn. You want to have a professional picture, professional banner, which you can go to Canva for free. Put in LinkedIn banner or a social media banner, and get something nice and simple, whatever expresses whatever you want people to know about you. Fill out your about section, use ChatGPT to help you create something that tells people what you did, what you do, where you're trying to go. And if you want, you can associate yourself to your schools and employment experience. It's whatever you want. But at least have a page. You don't even have to post anything. And just be familiar with the platform so that when you're out networking, you can pull up your QR code and people can scan it and follow you immediately. When you meet people in person and they scan your QR code, follow them back and send them a message saying, hey, nice meeting you at the DMD Dermatology Friendsgiving. I look forward to catching up in 2 weeks. Boom. So they remember you. Don't assume people will remember you. And I can't remember if it was Farah or someone else, but they said they'll send their picture too, because you have to be honest, we're all so busy. So if I come back and look at that message in 2 weeks or 3 months, I'll see your face and I'll be like, oh yeah, I remember. Although on LinkedIn, they can go over and see your face. So that might be more applicable in other platforms. But certainly making a connection between where you met. So now you're all ready to submit your CV, put a nice cover letter together. The cover letter, also she recommended, which I've been doing since college. And if you're in college or even some employer, I don't know if employers have this, But if you're in college, you can go to like the Career Center. They can help you format your CV. They can help you format a cover letter. Because honestly, I use a lot of AI, and I can tell when people use AI. And AI is a great, I mean, I recommend starting that way. But if you don't already have writing skills, take advantage of these things you're already paying for in your tuition and help them give you a few tips and stuff. Um, AI can be the bones, can help you get started, but then you just want to hone it in and make sure it has that personal touch and some key pointers that only a person can tell you. And they might know somebody. All the people that come through the Career Center, you got to think about that, right? They might know somebody. So that's a great networking opportunity too. So then put together your cover letter. Cover letter should cover the high points, right? Who are you? Education, clinical experience, personal connection to what you're trying to do, right? Not just you want to help people, something real personal. What's going to separate you from the other person? Because everybody who's applying has patient care experience, right? So what makes you so different from the next hire? And not only your patient experience, what else can you bring to the table? Do you have a good back? Because whoever you're applying to, they are a business owner. They need a lot of help, right? I talk about that every week about the amount of help that's needed to run a business. Do you have marketing skills? Do you like to write? Did you look at the website and feel like it needs to be updated? Maybe you have some of those skills or know. I wouldn't say you know someone. It'd be better if you have those skills. But if you know someone, you want to pitch that, that could be helpful and say you're going to oversee it or something. If you look at the website and say, oh, I can help you get more images. I can help you write a blog so you have more SEO traction in Google. So I can help you get more Google reviews. I can help you with staffing and retention. Oh, I did my DMP project on evidence-based practice. I can help you in this area, that area. I can with financing, whatever skills you have or are interested in learning more about. Maybe it's tech, introducing more tech into the practice, streamlining their operations. Like think about all those other skills that a business owner would be really attracted to. You can even ask ChatGPT if you don't know where to start with that. So that's your cover letter, and have it ready digitally, a PDF, and then have a physical copy, especially if you're going to go out in person, which is the next part, right? So now you want to get connections. So ask the people you know, start with people you know, even your own doctors, right? Their friends are doctors. Somebody's bound to know a dermatology provider who can let you shadow them. Start with that. You can go through LinkedIn. You can go to events, all kind of events. You're going to meet people. In your state practice, there's usually some nursing organization or nurse practitioner organization. They might have more meetings than derm meetings that you encounter. So don't overlook those as opportunities. And be ready to talk about what you want. I think this week I went on Instagram talking about how I went to that business expo last Sunday. And the people were sitting, right? They weren't trying to, when you go to the food hall and they're standing, they have their product right in front of you. There's no question about what they're trying to sell. And they're not shy about trying to sell it to you. They have it ready. There's no thinking for you to do. You don't have to do any of the hard work. You don't have to get in line and come around the counter and ask questions. Bourbon chicken, you want this? Here. Like, take that approach. Like, they were sitting down, they were quiet. I couldn't immediately tell what they did. I had to ask too many questions. And where's the energy? What makes me come to your table as opposed to them? It's the same thing with you. When you come and you say, look, I want to do this, I want to do that, have it all together. 1 minute. Who are you? What are you trying to do? How can they help you, right? How can you help them? What next steps would you do to follow up with that? So be prepared. So now you're going to do your shadow opportunity. They're going to look you up when you make this connection. So that's why I want you to do other stuff first. You can ask if there's a certain attire. Sometimes like everyone wears all black or whatever the case is. So just ask so you can blend in. And then how long are you going to be there? Should you bring a lunch, something to drink, that kind of thing? And then tell them what it is you want to see while you're there. And they might already, especially if it's a nurse practitioner, they're probably just going to be very forward with you and say, oh, we'll get to do this, this, or this. I'll make sure you can go see this, this, and that. And then just ask for what you want up front. How much shadowing do you want to do? Do they have a limitation on how much shadowing you can do? And then who do you want to shadow, right? There's a lot of roles in the practice, so you might want to be able to spend a little time with everyone. So just be clear about that up front. And then have a game plan before you go in on how you're going to continue that relationship, if at all. Maybe they'll open the door. Maybe you'll have to open it yourself and say, hey, is it okay if I whatever, right? And certainly get some tips and advice while you're there, and some way to stay in touch. If it's not once a week. That's kind of a lot. Maybe every once a month or something, just so that they'll remember you. And then to get that opportunity, I told you what I did is I put together a basket. Shout out to my friend, Dr. Patrice Kiesling. She owns her own pain practice in Colorado Springs. So she's the reason we even have this DMV dermatology group, because she started a Facebook page for the NPs there in Colorado Springs. And I don't know how many people are there, but it used to be over like 800 MPs in that page, and they would do meet in person. So that was my original vision for our group. Just meet on a Saturday morning, grab some breakfast or lunch, and it's kind of grown a little bit more than that. But she told me what she did, and she did this to get her preceptors too. So this can serve double duty advice. She put together a basket with her CV, and she went in person. And she told me what to do, and I did it. I had 3 baskets. I went to 2 practices. I never even made it to the 3rd practice because bef- they were closed when I went. So I said, "Okay, I'll come back Monday." But by the time I even got home, one of the practices responded, and so I took advantage of that. And I only had 2 weeks left in Colorado Springs, so I couldn't even make a time to see the other ones. But so I was able to go shadow, and it was a great experience. But I had a basket, I had my contact information, a little card saying what I wanted to do, why I wanted to do it, and thanking them. Yeah, I think it made a difference. And what she told me is that it was great that I came in person because she gets so many emails and they just sit on her desk, right? So you just got to think about how can you stand out. Um, Sometimes it doesn't take that much, and just be professional and cordial, and just know what you want to say. Be ready to say what you want to say. Um, it doesn't have to be perfected. You don't have to practice it. You can even write it down and just have your points that you want to address. When Allie had her meeting with me, she did exactly that. And she's been a great partnership ever since. So now you do your shadowing. You think that's what you want to do. Now you're going to apply for jobs. Hopefully by now you're making connections. The best way to get that job is you have to have some education. So if you don't already have experience, you want to sign up for one of these comprehensive programs that are out here. They range everywhere from what you can do over a weekend to 6 months to a year. The price points are all over the place, from free to a couple $1,000s. We know we have in-person programs like Florida Atlantic University. They have the in-person program. I think that's a 2-year one. Don't quote me on that, but that one's there. You have Leahy, they have their fellowship. That's 2 years. You have to apply. They have limited seating for that one. There's Pennsylvania. There's Regis. Um, there's usually a component of hands-on. So even if some of these are online programs, there's usually a requirement that you get your own preceptor and get some hours. And so for preceptors, we partner with MP Hub, and we offer a discount for our students who sign up with them, as well as our MPs can get paid by signing up with them. And so my partnership with them is to get more dermatology providers as preceptors. And so certainly could use your help in that effort, so that we can help more people get exposure and access to dermatology. So yeah, I know so many people, once they've signed up for these programs and they apply for jobs, they pretty much get them. It's really not that challenging to get in. But once you get in, that's not the end. It's just like working with a coach or a mentor. That's only the beginning, because there's so much to learn in derm. And if you're a new provider, there's also so much to learn, that you're going to continue to need mentorship and guidance. And that's what I've heard from other people. Even if they get hired and there is some hands-on training, it's usually not enough. And certainly there's no time to answer all your questions in a day either. And so I've heard it from MP who had been in the same job for 12 months and still was struggling and looking for support and education. And so you're going to need to continue that. And so make sure you get a schedule that allows you to do that, so you have time to study, and be organized in your studying. I've talked about before, Microsoft has a bunch of different tools like Google, like Excel, Word, PowerPoint, all those, but it also has the OneNote. And so you can, I use OneNote, I keep all my notes there. So it's like a notebook. So I have a dermatology notebook, and then within the dermatology notebook, I create different pages. So all the different diagnoses. So whether I'm studying on my own, or I go to a conference or an online webinar, and they're talking about atopic dermatitis for the 100th time, I just open up that tab and I just update my notes, right? And you can keep it structured so that if it's like so that you can use it while you're practicing. And so that's how the MP who I shadowed, that's how she was using it. She was able to go over there and check her notes in the middle of seeing the patient. She just stepped out the room. She checked her notes and then, she was able to move on. So that's a resource, certainly. This week was just Derm Week. So Derm Week happens a few times out the year. It is great. It's free. Like they have different tiers. If you do the free one, it's there. You can't get on-demand access. So if you're not available, then you might want to do the free one. I mean, the paid one. And I think there's CEs with that. So maybe you can get your employer to take care of that. But it's usually all day. I want to say from Thursday to Saturday, some really good topics. And then they even share all the slides. And so I'll download the slides and then I save them. I store them in my notes so that I have them for reference later. Because it's a lot of information, even you can't remember all of it. And so that's a great way to get some education and keep up with your notes. In addition to that, and having participate in these programs, I use Visual DX. I love Visual DX. You've probably heard of UpToDate. Visual DX is similar. However, they have the largest online catalog of diverse skin images. I want to say like 45,000, something like that. It's a big number. I've only used it for derm, all the diseases that we mentioned, and even more. You can put in the diagnosis. You can get differentials. You can put in just your assessment and get to a differential. And it will show you like the pictures and the name. You can use their AI tool, their camera. You can upload pictures or take pictures directly and then get recommendations. It will cover like background on the disease itself, treatment considerations, skin of color considerations, and then of course your recommendations, ICD codes, references, patient education that you can email directly from the platform. You can get CEs if you use it. You can keep track of how you're using it in practice, and you'll get CEs for that. And then of course all the images, which in the images it serves two purposes. Not only can you see what it looks like, because dermatology is a very visual practice, but also how they're writing it, how they're describing it, because the documentation, so much is focused on the patient care, but I think everyone would agree that documentation is the job. The job is documenting the patient's the easy part. And so being able to see how things are described is a big deal. And so I'm a champion for Visual DX. I try to help them establish strategic partnerships, and I'm really working towards seeing them in more nursing spaces. And so traditionally, they've worked primarily with physicians, but even they've recognized the impact and influence of NPs and PAs when it comes to practice. And so they're open and engaging in more organizations and opportunities to partner with us. And in addition to dermatology, they have all the other specialties, which is wonderful. So it's a really great resource. And in fact, I mentioned UpToDate. They actually work with UpToDate too, but they do a little bit more than what UpToDate does. And so, I'm just a big fan of theirs. And actually, Dr. Hannah Koppelman, she is the host of the Derm Club, one of my favorite podcasts, another resource that you can listen to, hear what's going on in derm, hear about other opportunities. She's my favorite. I haven't talked about her podcast. I don't want it's like I found something so good, I don't want everyone to know about it, but it's a really good podcast. She talks to some people who are at the top tier in their niche in derm, and phenomenal conversations. And so I forgot why I mentioned her. What was I talking about? Man, I was going to say, I don't remember anymore. When I watch this back, I'll have to, she interviewed the founder of Visual DX. And so, yeah. And so if you're a member of the Dermatology Nurses Association or the Society of Dermatology NPs, through that membership, you can get a discount for Visual DX. That's how I've gotten my discounts over the last 2 or 3 years that I've been a member, that I've had a subscription with them. And they have an app. And I need to tell them, the app I haven't had a lot of success with, but what I do is I just save the shortcut on my phone so that when I'm taking care of patients, I just pull it up, boom, 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 and move along. So that's really the best way to get in. And then once you're in, you're going to still need mentorship support, and education will continue. not only in taking care of the patient and developing your career, but how to negotiate your schedule, right? Do you want to work 5 days a week? Do you want to work 3 days a week? What does that look like? How many hours would that be? What kind of support would you get? How flexible is that? And the pay is very different. There's like a base pay, there's collections, and then over the course of time, it evolves because your practice evolves. And so over the course of time, people typically want less base and they want to be more compensated on like kind of the patient volume. So there's a lot of volume in dermatology. So if that's up your alley, then that would be something that, would appeal to you. But if it's not, then that's something to be mindful of. And that doesn't mean that you still couldn't negotiate it. And depending on where you practice, it might not even be a concern. So yeah, I think that covers it, right? Know what derm is, prepare yourself to have a good, strong foundation, time management, get in one of these programs and study. One of the main things we're looking to do in January when we start our monthly virtual grand rounds is to give you study hall. We've all taken these programs. I've done 3 of them myself. They're all a little bit different, but the one thing that's consistent, whether you're in an online program or an in-person program, anywhere, anything, any topic, I've done all of them, is that you can only read so much text, right? And it all starts to blend together after a while. And that's passive learning, that's passive education. And so I believe, and I've been the most successful when I take an active role in my learning. So that's becoming and prepared, having my notes be organized the way my brain works. So you have to know how your brain organizes information. For me, it's having headings, and every time the subject switches, putting a heading so I know that what the emphasis is, right? And then if I'm going to a lecture, that shouldn't be the first time I hear the information. I should have read the chapter before or looked at the objectives or look at the key summary, something so that when I hear the lecture, that's my second time being exposed to it. So I can start to begin to think about the information and ask questions and make comparisons. And then the third time I look at it is when I come back within, maybe not always within 24 hours, but that does help your retention by 75%. But come back at some point and revisit that information, make it make sense, do some quizzes, some questions, bring it alive. That's where the blog comes in for me. I can talk about it. But in our virtual grand rounds, you'll be able to talk it out. So now you can start to have separate memories for everything, create new wrinkles in your brain. You always remember that case that you talked about with your colleague, right? You remember it really well, and it's hard to remember all the notes that you read over the weekend, right? So we want to create that opportunity in our grand rounds for you to present cases, get more confident in doing that. I want to hear NPs being more professional in their presentation of the patient, knowing how to format questions, like you were telling me about this problem and you need recommendations on how to treat this patient, but you don't know how to voice what that is. I want to see you get more confident in that. And then the disease itself. What is the disease? What's going on? What's wrong here? What are we trying to fix? And what are our options? And then how do we have that conversation with the patient? And then what are we going to look for upon evaluation? How do we educate the patient and evaluate that they understand? What can we do to be more productive in practice? I only have a limited amount of time with this patient. What resources can I utilize so that I can still be productive and be present and efficient with my patient, right? Those are some things that don't really get addressed in the programs and in practice, right? And those can be make us really struggle and can lead to more imposter syndrome. And so we want to be able to give you that safe environment to be an active learner, to have all your questions addressed, right? Whenever we do these programs, even the webinars, people submit their questions, but we always run out of time. Nobody's question always gets answered. And so we'll be able to answer your questions there. And yeah, that's the goal. And then just, learn together. We'll cover case studies, cover some of the latest research, and then talk about social media trends because your patients are talking about it. And sometimes they know a whole lot more than we do because we're so busy taking care of patients. And so we'll create a space for you to learn about, be up to date on the trends and know how to respond based on the literature that we have, right? And how to do that respectfully with the patient, and then how to just navigate your own practice within your employer. It's always good to have a neutral party who can give you that information. And yeah, I think that's all we have. Let's see. I put my notes down. So we have the DMV Dermatology and PPA groups Friendsgiving this Thursday. I sent out an email to the people who registered. Shayna won't be able to make it, but she's worked really hard to find us, to set us up for our next one. So for the people who've registered, I've asked them if they still want to meet. I'll still show up. We can still do our Friendsgiving. It just won't be sponsored. And then we've already have our sponsor for January, which will be Galderma. And then we have a new connect in DC. And so we'll be able to put together some more sponsored events as well with them. And because they're well connected, that should help us continue to grow the group. So yeah, big shout out to Shayna. Thank you so much for her help and support, continued support, especially because she was at SDPA this weekend working and still helping me on the back end. So super helpful. And to those of you who received my email, thank you for your patience and understanding. Oh, so I'm going home this weekend for Friendsgiving, and so I think I come back on Sunday. So I won't be filming on Sunday. I won't be coming here to talk to you all on Sunday, but I think I have some free time on Friday. Yeah, I won't have time to film on Sunday, but on Friday I'm gonna come. I think Friday let's shoot for Friday, and then when I have a better idea of the time, it will probably be around lunchtime or so that I'll go live. I think that'll probably be the best time. But I'll put up a little thumbnail like I did today so we can meet up next week. And I passed my certification this week, so now I can move on with my life and start studying some other things and talking to you about what that is. The Mahogany Telederm Nurse Internship, the application closes on the 15th. I talked to Rachel Dumas. She's a nurse. She's a nurse. She's been a nurse for over 10 years. She's in nursing informatics, and she has her own company called A Light After 9. She came on the podcast to share her nursing journey as well as her company and her own personal experience with pregnancy loss, which inspired her to start her company. But I told her about this internship idea. I want to see more nurse entrepreneurs creating our own internships, not externships, although they are still great, but internships specifically for business and leadership development. So I told Rachel about it, and there was like a span of like 2 or 3 weeks when we first talked about it and when I saw her this week. And since then, she has already hired 4 interns. She posted it on Indeed. She got over 60 applications. She interviewed the top candidates. 2 have a nursing background, 2 have an informatics background. Like I said, she's in nursing informatics. And so I just want to spread that word as much as possible. And so she was kind enough to, I've been coming on the last 2 weeks talking about how I'm going to keep everything organized. Well, she's already figured it out. And she was kind enough to share that with me. So thank you to her. I'm going to take a look at that over the week, see how I can utilize it. And then I will update you on that maybe by Friday if I have time on Friday. So we'll do that next week. And then I think that's it. So yeah, don't forget we have our registrations over for diversity in dermatology for our conference March 27th to the 30th in Louisville, Kentucky. We have 3 free workshops you can sign up for. Surgical, aesthetic, and dermoscopy. They have limited seating, so first come, first serve. For our aesthetics workshop, we have Erica Berry. She's a nurse practitioner in the DMV area. She has been in aesthetics for over 10 years. She co-owns the Med Spa in Potomac, Maryland. And she's affectionately known as Injector Bunny on social media. So that's going to be super exciting. We have a whole host of speakers coming. They all stick around for the entire weekend and engage with us. Great opportunity for networking, because they come from all across the country, and they know derm is a small world. So you're bound to meet someone who knows someone who can help you out. Lots of people have gotten connections by attending conference. And of course, it just will increase your confidence even more about what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And we have Allie with our Derm and P's and K's of Atlanta. She's doing a wonderful job growing the group. And when I think about her and our other members, especially our advisors, they have all either come in starting in derm or getting a job in derm since they've joined. And so so happy to see their journey and their commitment to reaching their goal. And just excited on how we're going to continue to be able to grow the group and to have these connections with dermatology providers and practices within our local community. So that's all I have, friends. Thank you again for joining me. I do apologize for the late start. But this show, the reason I'm even late, because I interviewed Dr. Bentel for the second episode, but for the first episode, we interviewed her girls, who are the CEO and founders of Kid Naturals. That's Naturals with a Z. They're going to be our Thanksgiving episode next Sunday. They'll be our youngest and cutest guests to date. So you don't want to miss that. We release new videos on noon Eastern on Sundays on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and then the audio at 5 a.m. on all your favorite podcast apps, which is another thing, right? If you're entering the social media space, I'm not going to all those platforms doing all those things, right? Everything has strategy, even getting your first job in dermatology. You can Google your life away, you can figure it out on your own. But I highly recommend strategy, community, mentorship. So remember, we have the virtual preceptor shop, which has digital products to help you do everything we just talked about today. You don't have to write everything down. I put it all together for you. I'm still working on the dermatology DNP project ideas. This is going to be my biggest book to date, and my goal is to have it be my first book that's out there in the public. So I don't know when the release will be for that, but I'll keep you posted. Remember, you can contact me through the Mahogany Dermatology blog. Be happy to hop on a video call and talk about dermatology. I hope you have a great week. Please take care of yourself. I thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.